take a look at some of this Agadata. It's I was vacillating back and forth as to whether or not we should learn the Agadata. I figured, we'll just dedicate one shir, a half hour to this Agadata. And it's on Daf Ayin Hey and Aleph. And we're looking for an Agadata about man, Vishvach HaMan. So let me just take a moment to sit down here. Sorry. Oh. Okay. So the Gemara now quotes a pasuk in Shmos Perek Tes Zayin, pasuk Lamed Aleph. The pasuk reads, "Vayikru Beis Yisrael es Shmo Man," and then it says, "V'hu kizera Gad Lavan." What does this mean? Kizera Gad Lavan. Amar Rav Ami, Agul Kigida. The man was round in shape, like a Zera Gad. Zera Gad is what's called today in Hebrew Kuzbara. I'm trying to remember what Kuzbara in English has a very fancy word. All right, we'll call it Kuzbara now. I don't particularly like Kuzbara, but the Israelis love it. And it's round in shape. Now, the color of man is lavan. What do you say?
It's called coriander or cilantro.
Oh, coriander. Right. Is lavan kimargalis. It's a white color that looks like a pearl, a white pearl. Tana Rabbanu, we learned in a brisa, and the Torah is comparing man to Zera Gad. Why? Shedoma lizera pishton begiv olin. That the seeds of flax in their original natural state are round. Acherim omrim Gad. The comparison between man and Gad is shedome lehagodah. Now, Haggadah doesn't mean Haggadah Shel Pesach, although Haggadah Shel Pesach is included in this generic term Haggadah. Haggadah is what we call Haggadah. Shemosheches libo shel adam kimayim. That it's very nice, attractive, and we enjoy learning Haggadah. And the man has that same quality. It's moshech es libo shel adam lachilo. Because you could taste any taste that you wanted. You're in the mood for coffee, ice cream, Ben and Jerry's. So that's what you have in mind, and that's what you'll taste when you eat the man. If you're a guy like me, you'll have in mind a good, thick, well done hamburger. So that's the nature of man. Tanya Idach, we have another brisa. Why is the man called Gad? Lashon Haggadah. Shemagid lahem Yisrael. This is amazing. An amazing miracle that took place with the man. You know that the portion of man that would fall on a daily basis from Shomayim in front of each Ohel, that would correspond to the number of people who lived inside the Ohel. And therefore, Magilem Yisrael, here's a case of a woman who's divorced, she remarried, and now she has a baby. And we're not sure if who's the father of this baby, her first husband, after 9 months, or her second husband, and it's a preemie, it's a 7-month-old baby. Ben Tisha l'Rishon, Ben Shiva l'Bal Achron. And what happens? Everybody goes out to collect a man. It's an Omer legal golis, 1 Omer's volume for each head. And it doesn't matter whether he collects more or he collects less. It's always going to be Omer legal golis. Now, if the amount of Omer that falls corresponds to the shear of the Beiso Shel Abal Rishon, then you knew that this Vlad was the ben of the Baal Rishon, who was born after 9 months. If, on the other hand, you find that shear in the Beiso Shel Baal Achron, then you know that the Vlad was a preemie 7 months that was born, and he's B'no Shel Achron. The Brisa says Lavan. Okay, it says God Lavan. Shemalvin Avnoseim Shel Yisrael. A whole nother dimension of man. And this probably reflects the idea of Midas Habitachon. How do you develop Midas Habitachon? You don't know if tomorrow there'll be man. Your cupboards are absolutely empty in the midbar. All you have is man that fell that day, which could last you from morning till evening. But what's going to be tomorrow? So this is a training session in developing and penetrating into your heart the midah of bitachon to rely on Hashem. That tomorrow there will be man. It's also a training session in gratitude, because you realize that you totally depend upon the Almighty in order to sustain you, the supernatural existence of man. And therefore, you should be meshabed yourself. Your lave should be committed to He who supports you and sustains you. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa of Yossi Omer, Kishem, Shahanovi Oyamagid Lehem Yisrael, Mashe Bocherim, Umashe Bechorin, Umashe Bestokim. A Navi, through his prophetic transmission, will reveal that which is concealed. Kachaman Magid Lehem Yisrael, Mashe Bechorin, Umashe Bestokim. So the idea of God is Magid Umevar Devarim Shu Safek. It's like a Magid, it conveys, and it's Lavan, it's Malabin. Malabin means that when you have something that's dark and you can't discern, you need a light, a white light. So the white light here will reveal something. So what is it about the man that we have Dvarim Shem Safek, things that we're in doubt about, and the man will clarify? This is a reference to the Dayanim, to the judges. They have a suffix. They don't know which litigant is telling the truth, which is Zakai and which is Chayav. Kesach Shnaim Shabol Lefnei Moshe Ledin. Zeh Omer Avdi Ganavta. Zeh Omer Ata Machartol. One claims you stole it, the other claims I paid you for it. Today you get a receipt, but he didn't have a receipt. Amalem Moshe La Boker Mishpat. In other words, tomorrow we're going to find out who is the thief when the man comes down from Shamayim. As the Pasuk says, Vayilkitu Oso Baboker Baboker. We will then get some clarification which of the two litigants is the truthful one. Lemachar, the next day, when daybreak held, they checked to see where did the man fall. Im nimtza, if they found that it fell, the Omer of the man, the base Rabo Rishon, the original master who owned the Eved, the Adua Shezek Nova. We knew that the second one usurped, illegally stole this Eved, and it really belongs to the first guy. But if Nimta Omro Bebayis So Rabbi Sheni, if he finds the extra omer for the Eved in the house of the so-called buyer, then we know he bought the Eved. Kidasu kidin, it was sold, and he's not a thief. So that's one kind of dispute that was clarified by the man. Number two, v'chein ish v'isha shebo lifnei Moshe l'din. Ze omer hi sarach alai, v'hi omer shu sarach alai. Okay, now what is sarach alai and sarach alai means? So I'm going to give you a summary of Rabbeinu Eliakim, one of the Rishonim who wrote a commentary on Yoma. He writes, Sracha alai hi pash'a v'yatz'a mimeni v'holcha lebeis avia below shum tam. She rebelled against me. I think that would be the best word. And she packed out of the house for no good reason and went back to her father's house. What's he claiming here? I mean, we're not going to be able to force this woman back into a marriage against her will, but why do I have to pay the ksuba if she decided to pack her bags and walk out of this marriage? I don't want to pay the ksuba. She said no. Who ain't a wrote to be? The reason why I packed out is because he indicated through his behavior that he's not interested in me as a wife and want to treat me the right way. He doesn't have that love relationship. If he'll give me a get, then he should be paying the ksuba together with the get. So who's guilty? Try to figure out between a husband and a wife. She claims that he was guilty in the way he treated her and an indication of his lack of love. And she claims, and he claims on the contrary. She one bad day, woke up on the wrong side of the bed and she packed her bags and went back to her father's house. I'll give her a get, but I'm not going to pay a ksuba. The next morning, when the man came down from heaven for this woman, im nimta omra the base baila. If the meat of the omer, that volume of man, is found outside of her husband's house, which means that she should be in her husband's house, not in her father's house. He wants to remain in this marriage relationship. You want out. You belong in Beis Baila. That's why the Omer fell in Beis Baila. You want out of this marriage? You have no right to ksuba. Ksuba is meant to inhibit a person, a husband, from divorcing his wife. But now you want a divorce. You indicate through your actions that you're packing your bags, you're living in your father's house. You don't deserve a ksuba. But nimso omer base of via, if the omer of her man fell in the house of her father, that's where she really should be. That's the declaration above, from above. Then he was the one who initiated this situation, which is going to ultimately require a divorce, and he has to pay the ksuba. So the man was very, very, very elusive. That he was Lavan. He clarified the darkness. Now the Gemara goes back to the psukim as far as where the man fell. Ksiv, the pasuk says in Bamidbar Yuda Aleph, Uberedes hatal al hamachne loyla. It sounds al hamachne like the man fell in the encampment, in the mach uksiv, but elsewhere it says hineni mantir lechem lechem in hashmayim v'yatza on v'lokta. The people have to go out of the city limits, so to speak, in order to gather the man. So what is it? Is Beredes Hatal? ala machne. And Yerid Amon Ola, it's in the machne, or is it v'yotza on the lokt? Uksiv, elsewhere it says shatu ha'am v'loktu. Shatu means they went out to a far off place in order to collect man. Is the man fell baraka berichuk maka, some distance from the encampment? So there's three possibilities of man. Where does it fall? Possibility number one, the Torah says machne, inside the machne. Possibility number two, v'yotza on v'loktu, somewhere immediately in the vicinity of the boundaries of the machne, over the boundaries of the machne. And then we have another possible location, which is shatu, means makom roch. So the Gemara now is going to analyze that there are three categories or profiles of groups of people, and where the iman would fall would depend upon which level of religiosity and piety which group you belong to. Ketza, Tzadikim, Yared al Pesach Bateyan. Tzadikim would get the man just by opening up instead of looking for the morning the New York Times. You found the man. That's what happened to the Tzadikim. Beinanim, Yatsu, Veliktu. They would go outside the limits of the Machne, and that's where they found the man. But Rishayim, Shatu, Velaktu. They had to go L'Makom Bracha. Could you imagine the embarrassment? You think you're a tzaddik, you expect to open the door of your house this morning and find not a newspaper, but find a man. Instead, you look for the man and you find it chutz l'machne. And if you're in Russia, you'll find it even further away. There are no secrets. It says with regard to the man, lechem min hashamayim. And it sounds like the man was ready to eat. You didn't have to cook it or bake it or fry it. It was lechem. Uksiv, but elsewhere it says, we also saw ugos. It sounds like they had to bake the man and make it into cookies. Uksiv, and there's a third pasuk that says, v'tachano b'reichayim. It means that not only did you have to cook or bake the man, you even have to do the grinding of the man. So how do we reconcile these two psukim? Ha'ketzad l'tzadikim lechem, l'beinanim ugos, u'l'rishayim tachnu b'reichayim. Again, the Beinanim had to make cookies. They had to bake cookies. They couldn't eat wine in its natural state like the Tzaddikim could. And the Rishonim, they couldn't just bake it as a cookie. They had to go through the entire process, starting from Tchina, and grind it. I guess the man in that sense was solid, at least for the Rishonim. The pasuk says, "Odachu b'maducha." What does that mean? This is the continuation of the pasuk that we read before. V'yasa also ugos, and Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ravi Tema, Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina, Malamed sheyared lahem Yisrael imaman tachshite nashiv davar shenidoch b'midocha. Together with the man were tachshite noshim. These are besamim, fragrant cosmetics that accompany the man. And nidoch ben meducha. You take a meducha, which is otherwise known as a machteshes. It's a grinder, and you take these tachshitim and you grind them. When you make them into very thin powder, then it's a very convenient kind of bosa to beautify the women, puts them. And that would give them a great smell for their bailam. You may remember that the only reason we had a people of Israel to redeem them from Mitzrayim is because the women folk went out and they enticed their husbands. And that's how there was reproduction. That can only be possible if they puts themselves. Now, this might depend upon whether the women were part of the slave labor or not. Then the pasuk continues and says, "Uvishlo ba parur." Parur is another word for a pot, a kedera. Amar Rab Chama Malami sheyored lem liyisrael imaman sikei kedera. Sikei kedera of tavlinim are spices that you need to cook. You know, if you don't cook with spices, it becomes quite bland. When Klal Yisrael went out to collect the man, then they were able to find with the man tavlinim. Now, what I said before, I think I have to withdraw when I think about a second time. Because we're talking about after Yetzias Mitzrayim, when the man fell for 40 years. So why is it so critical that Tafshite Noshim fell together with the man? Let me just see if by chance I missed something here. No, I'm not seeing anything here. I don't want to take my time to find it in the art scroll, but if you have an art scroll and you don't mind looking it up, see if he says anything about these fragrant cosmetics that came down with the man, because in my Gemara, all he says is miskashtos bahem kadeshi yerechan orev libalein. So it's not what I told you before, that b'schus nashim tzidkonios nigalu avosenim b'Mitzrayim. We're not talking about Gula b'Mitzrayim. We're talking about the 40 years in the mid. Now, the Gemara is going to now darshan the following pasuk. Vayitchu milifnei Moshe's kol hatruma sharivi b'nei Yisrael v'lechas avodas hakodesh lasos osa vehem eviu elav od nidava baboker. What does this mean? That they brought a nidava, a contribution for the building of the Mishkan, on a daily basis every morning. My baboker. Why the double language baboker? Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, mi dava. What does it mean, mi dava? Mi davar sheyoret lahem baboker. How did they have money, or shall we say possessions of value to contribute to the building of the Mishkan? I mean, they were in the desert, but together with the man fell the davar sheyar lem baboker, fell nidava, that which they would be able to give as a nidava. Melani, this teaches us sheyardu lehem Yisrael avodim tovos magilios im haman. Together with the man, they found very expensive stones and pearls. And they used these gifts, these wonderful gifts that came down from Shamayim with their man, to contribute to the Mishkan. Vanesiim, Heviu es Avnei Hashoam. Okay, these are the stones for the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. And Tana, we have a brisa that says that these Nesiim are Nesiim Mamash. Now, the word Nesiim means to carry something. It's a reference to the Anonim, to the clouds that would carry. V'cheinu omer Nesiim v'ruach l'geshem ayin. So Nesiim are Anonim, and they brought the Avnei Shoah. Now the Gemara goes back to the man. The pasuk testifies v'hoya ta'amo kitam l'shed Hashemen. What does that mean? Omer Rabbi Avo. The man is being compared by mashal to the shade. Shade is a bosom from which the baby drinks, nurses. Ma shade zeh tino toim v'kama ta'amim. I guess mother's milk could have different tastes. Af Haman calls man Yisrael ochlan also motziim v'kama ta'amim. They could get many different tastes when they ate the man. Another presentation was l'shade mamash. And now the Gemara is comparing the man to a shade mamash. Ma shade zeh mishapech l'kama gvanim, af hamon mishapech l'kama ta'am. Very strange. That a shade, that's a demon, could change his features and have different countenances. And the mind could also change into many different ta'am. Vayomer Moshe b'seis Hashem lachem va'erev basar lechem v'lechem v'boker l'spoa. Tana mishmei Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha basar sheshalu shalo kahogen. They had plenty of basar because the pasuk itself says laseis lachem va'erev basar. Ishalu shalo kahogen. They were not hungry, in the bellies were not starving. Nitalem shalo kahogen. The basar that Hashem is going to bring to them, the quail, as a result of their, again, complaint, is going to be Nitan Lahem Shalom Kahogen. What does this mean? Nitan Lahem Shalom Kahogen. Rashi says that it would fall nighttime. And that's not a proper time that's comfortable for preparing the food. In other words, I don't get it. It says Baboker. Just 1 second. Did I miss something? Give me a minute. I have to take out. Oh, here it is. It's right here on my desk. Just 1 second. We said that the man fell Baboker. My mistake. Oh, I made a big mistake. We're not talking about man anymore. They were complaining that they didn't have basar to eat. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're not asking in the proper way. I'm not going to give you basar in the proper way. And what does that mean? That the basar is going to come down at twilight at the end of the day. And it's going to be very difficult at that time to prepare the meat. But if you take a look here on Ayin Hayamid Beis, lechem sheshalu kahogen, when they ask for bread, that's a proper request because you can't survive without bread. Nitan lem kahogen. So they got the man in the morning, baboker. They had plenty of time during the course of the day to prepare a seuda, a banquet. Mikan, from the fact that it says ba'erev basar lechol limda tor derchet shelo yochal odem basar lebalayla. This is amazing. Did you know that the Chachamim in the Talmud discouraged eating meat during the day and encouraged you to eat meat at night? I mean, to me, that's. He says in Derech Eretzim Shalolochal Odom Basar Lebalayla Renita Lahem Kahogen. So on the one hand, we said that the basar was given them in an improper way during the evening. But on the other hand, it says that lechem was kahogen and it was given during the day. So what's the Marsha's kasha here? Hiksha Marsha in derech eretzu shelo lechel odem basar el b'layla harinita lehem kahogen. Yeah, but there's not enough time to prepare. Okay. If a person is eating a suda, he should eat it by day and not by night. He should be able to see his food and enjoy it, and it brings him to satiation. So now you're telling me he should eat meat at night? He's not going to enjoy it at night. He can't see his food. Your answer is Abai never meant to say that he should eat his meals during the day. What he meant is that he should have light to see his food. That light could be artificially created light. You know, you make yourself a torch. It should be ke'ein orayom. Omar of Acha bar Yaakov, B'tchila ha'yisrael domim, Ketarnagolim, Shemenakrim v'ashpa, Ad sheba Moshe v'kavalem zman su'uda. Initially, the people were eating all the time. Like he compares it to a hen that picks away from the food, nibble in the trash heap, until Moshe came and established meal times for them. Very interesting. Moshe established meal times for them. And Rashi says a meal of man in the morning and a meal of man in the evening. Odenu bein abasar odenu bein hashinayim. The people complained about meat. Hashem said, I'm going to give you the slav. You're going to gather yourself together and you're going to eat the meat. And it seems that they were punished immediately. When they ate the basar, it was odenu bein hashinayim. It was still trapped between the teeth. Uksiv. And earlier it says in the parasha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to them, Lo yom echad tochlun v'lo yomayim v'lo chamisha yamim v'lo asara yamim v'lo asrim yom ad chodesh yamim ad asher yetzeh me'apchem v'yolachem l'zor. So it indicates that there was no punishment for an entire month. Whereas the initial pasuk says, "Habasa odenu ben hashinayim," as if to say that God got angry at them immediately, and they were punished as they were eating. Ketzad beinanim li'alter mesu. Odenu ben hashinayim is referring to beinanim Rishonim, Mitztarim, v'holchim ad chodesh yomim. But in the case of Rishonim, God postponed their punishment for a month, and he dragged it out, so to speak. Okay, let's make a note of where we got up to. I mean, we'll have to make a decision here whether we want to finish this Agada. As I told you, it's a very, very long Agada. It ends on Daf Ayin Vav Hamid Beis, or the bottom of Ayin Vav Hamid Al. I don't know. You'll have to leave it to me. I'll decide over Shabbos. Chances are that I might decide to skip the rest of this Agada. Okay, then. So let me wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much.